Good evening. You're welcome to the Nigerian Pride today, the 21st of September 2022. Yes, we have gone to the morning period. We've successfully bid our feedback, our farewell to the monarch. And today, we're looking at the challenge of parenting amongst the African family. African family in the UK or in the diaspora, whichever we want to say, but more about the challenges faced by African families in raising kids here in the UK. And to do that with me here, I've got my guests who will be sharing our knowledge with us and our advice. Hello, guest. I don't know if she's there or we're getting an issue there with the connectivity. All right, while we're waiting for that connection thing to be sorted, it's just important to go through some of the research findings that we've got. Like the British Journal of Social Work reported that African children upbringing in the UK, that there's this cultural tension damaging the well-being of African families in the UK. And this was as a result of research they completed amongst African families around London. And today we're just trying to look at how is this affecting, you know, African families here in the UK, and then what can we do? And I think my guest is here now. If you can just introduce yourself, my guest.
Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. Yeah, this is Opeyemi Balogun of Niger Team Mentors Network. I'm so glad to be here again. Thank you for this privilege to be here again. Thank you so much. I do not take this for granted. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. For giving your time to be on this with us. What we're really looking at today, it has to do with um, children upbringing in the UK, especially amongst the African community or African families. Now, this was an offshoot of the topic we discussed about 2 weeks ago when we're talking about parenting, but then looking at
Okay.
what is happening across the UK, many families having cases with the social welfare department, many families having their children
Mm,
taken away from them.
mm,
And in that research I
mm,
was talking about earlier, in that research by the British Journal of Social Work, they confirmed that Black African families in the UK are in parenting fear. They are parenting in fear of being penalized by authorities due to cultural differences and institutional racial misconception. Now, where I want us to start from
mm.
today is, what is African parenting? Because I don't want to say what is parenting, but what is African parenting?
All right. Thank you so much. So, African parenting, if I'll put it in my view, is parenting according to the African culture. Parenting based on the values that we learned, that was transferred to us, as a matter of fact, because we are Africans. So African parenting has to do with you and I parenting according to how we were raised from Africa. So bringing the values I got as an African into my parenting style is purely Africa parenting.
Okay, so you've mentioned things that can you go down deep and dissect everything you talk when you talk about African values? What are those values you're talking about? What are they? Because it's because what I
Yeah.
want us to be able to do today is to be able to educate the community that is hosting us about our culture. So, what are these values you're talking about? What are these African values?
Okay. So you as Africans, we have come into a culture that is entirely different from ours. Our culture in Africa is very rich with so many values, and at the same our culture can be on the extreme too. Take for instance, the African culture normalizes beating a child as a disciplinary method. I don't know if you're getting me. The African culture normalizes it welcomes beating a child. The African culture kind of is harsh. The African culture uses harshness as a disciplinary tool. The African
Is that
culture
harshness in terms of is that
would
harshness
welcome
in
the
terms of
voice,
sorry, I was just gonna say sorry for cutting
discipline,
in. I was gonna ask as
discipline.
the, when you say harsh because
Yeah,
it's good to like I want us to present it not judging it by the Western values or the Western understanding. If you understand what I mean.
yeah,
Okay, so go on, please.
I do. So what I meant by the harshness is the African culture would not listen to the voice of a child. The African culture would allow the voice of the parents over the voice of the child. And in this contemporary, I mean, in this context that we are talking about, in the diaspora, the voice of every child matters. Every child has a voice. But back in Africa, the parent's voice is stronger than the voice of a child. So those are some of the things that the African parenting would bring in when we are raising our children with the style of the African in the diaspora. I don't know if you're
Okay.
getting me. All right. So
Yeah, we're listening and we're
there are a
getting
lot
you.
of sorry.
Yeah, we're listening. Go on, please.
Okay, all right. So thank you. So the African culture will not pay attention to what the child is saying per se, because the African culture wants a child to respect an elder. The African culture wants a child to keep quiet when an elder is speaking. The African culture would not allow a child to defend him or herself when an adult is speaking, when an elder is speaking. So those are the differences between the African parenting and the parenting style in the diaspora.
Hmm.
You can go on, sir.
Okay. So, from your explanation there, some people say, well, we don't think, our form of discipline or the way we raise our children, that thus the ways we use are harsh, and they will tell you, that is the principle for us. That is how we were raised. That's how even the likes of the Nobel laureates we've had from Nigeria, the great leaders we've had from Nigeria, from Africa, everywhere. This is how they were raised. This is the African way.
Yeah.
Now, I look at it there when you were saying that that maybe the voice of the African child is not being heard. But I remember growing up, I believe I do tell my parents what I want for Christmas or what I want for school, and they will try to get it if they can get it, and if not, they will not. But when it comes to discipline, you must have really done something critically wrong before your parent will not listen to even any excuse you have to say before you even say anything. But let's come here now into the system, because I mean, there was something also that was reported by the Guardian about 6 days ago, and the Guardian saying that, in fact, the topic says, farmed, why are so many black children fostered by white families in the UK? And this is a trend that has been happening since the 50s. It's a trend that has been happening in the 50s. So, I mean, where I would take it to now is, and we know when we look at this, we find out that most of the children that are taken away are children that were born outside the shores of the UK and brought here, whether they were born in Nigeria or other part of the world. Most of them are not born here. Now,
Yeah.
sometimes most of these issues happen when they are just turning teenagers or they become teenagers. Some it may be as young as even 6 or 5 or 3 or 2 years old. What will
Yeah.
you be saying to a family, an African family that just arrived in the UK? What will you be telling them when it comes to parenting in the UK?
Hmm. Well, I when you gave me the topic, I was privileged to go on gov.uk just to confirm what you said. You know, I just went on there to check the level of crime amongst black children as against their white counterparts. And I realized that the rate of crime among the black children is far more than that of the white. And that's just to confirm what you're saying. You know, just like you said, there's a lot of disconnect going on with families here, African families here now. Many of us are losing out our children, especially when they are turning teenagers on a daily basis. And I have observed some things. One of the things I've observed is that sometimes with the struggles of these children as they turn teenagers, we forget that as they are growing into their teenage years, there are lots of pressures staring at them in the face. You know, we forget that as teenagers, adolescence is already a battle on them. We forget that as they become teenagers, the environment they are growing in is also bringing so many them. We forget that as they turn teenagers, a lot of things, there are needs staring at this, and they don't know how to help themselves. Though to them, they seem like adults, they seem like they are growing into adulthood, but they are in between, and we don't recognize these struggles. Rather than recognize their struggle, we want to fight back with them. We want to fight them back. We start seeing the attitudes rather than see the need, rather than see the struggles. What we as parents, African parents, are seeing is the attitude. Rather than see the deepness of that child, we see attitudes and we start flaring up. And the result of us flaring up is the losing out that we are seeing. The result of an African parent fighting back a child that is growing as a teenager in the midst of struggle. Disconnect that we are seeing with our families today. So one thing I have observed is that many of us fail to recognize their struggles growing into teenagehood. Many of us still want to, we are still looking, you are still looking at that child that is now 16 years old. You are still seeing the child like he or she is years old. You are seeing the child like he or she is 9, the way you saw the child when he or she was 9 years old. We need to start recognizing the struggles of children. And, you know, we fail to connect the dots between the culture that we are coming from and the culture that we have met ourselves. We want to lord our culture over them. We
Okay.
don't want to listen
Hold
to them.
on.
Nothing that,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, sorry, because I like where you're going to, and I just want to make sure we make some clarifications before we go. And I'm sorry to cut in there. Now, first you say, we're trying to
yeah,
lord our culture over them, but that culture is the culture of the descent they come from. That is the culture of their descendants.
mm,
Yeah, whether they have migrated
yeah,
here or not, it is, and this society, the UK society is well, we're trying our best to be an equal and inclusive society, which means we don't want to use our
yeah,
standard to judge other standards. So I mean, I'm just trying to look at, just to say,
mhm.
look at what you're saying, that we don't want, yeah, it's good to balance it up, but is it not also good for the institution here to try to understand our culture and see where we bridge it? Or what do you think?
Well, I don't have an issue with the institutions. I only have an issue with parents.
Okay.
I believe that parents can connect the dots. Parents can actually strike the balance. You can retain your culture while they still live in another culture.
Hmm.
You can
How?
model your culture to them. And as a matter of fact, your culture lives in you as a parent. Your culture lives in you as a parent. Let everything around you speak your culture. It is fine, but don't lord your culture over another culture.
Hmm. Okay.
Are you with me?
But yeah, yeah, I understand. When
All right.
it's
So,
just the same thing you're going to, yeah, yeah, go on.
all right. So, um, find the we all have our original culture. We have the things we brought from home. But there's this funny saying that when you are in Rome, you behave like a Roman. I am not saying that forget your culture, don't do anything about your culture. But what I'm saying is, while you are maintaining your culture, give room for other culture too, and that's inclusivity. That's what it means to include. That's inclusion.
But is it a
Give room for
must to
other
do
cultures.
that?
Welcome other culture too.
But is it a must to do that? Is it a
You
must
are
for people to because of the because listening we're talking about,
is
it has led
okay.
to many families losing their children. In fact, I know of families who have decided to just, instead of taking a fight with the institution, they've taken a flight, and they've sent the children back to Nigeria. Go and do this. When you finish at this way, then you
Back
come
home.
back.
But is that the solution?
Well,
Is that the
if
solution?
the
No.
institution is not, so the thing is, what they, because this research I'm telling you about here, these are research that were completed, and the African families, the participants
Yeah.
in this different research, what they are saying is that, see, the institution is not trying to understand our culture and our values. And the thing in the UK is that we are set up to bring in other values and institutions to understand them so that we can continue to promote integration. And that's why if you go to the NHS, you will see that out of the languages they translate to, they have African, they have Igbo, they have Hausa, they have Yoruba, they have Greek, all those languages. So why then is it difficult for the institution? I know you may not be able to answer this because you're not from the institution, but Yes, we don't
Yeah.
know why the institution is not doing this, but I know you've said the parents, so you've mentioned the parents need to adjust. How do parents
Can I
adjust?
ask you something? Can I say something? Maybe we should
Yeah,
find
you can
out
say something,
from
but you
these
cannot ask me.
Asians. Yeah, I'm not asking you now. Maybe we should find out from the Asians. How do they do it? How do they mean their culture in the diaspora, in the midst of another culture? Because, are you with me?
Yeah, yeah, very much.
This thing that is this problem, I have not seen it this much with the Asian. So I think a lot of us Africans are the ones not doing what we should do. We are not doing
Okay, so
that. My
I
child
mean,
is
from what
growing
you've
up
said,
in a different.
sorry, it's just to say, for what you've said stated there, I understand. Yeah, you've said we're trying to load our own culture and values over the culture of the UK and things like that. But is it wrong for us to actually question the British child welfare norms, practices, and policies and professional behaviors as well? For example, I mean, I have British friends whom children will call their grandpa and grandma by name. That is that is seen as being that's the
Okay,
highest level of disrespect in Africa, calling your grandma or grandpa by name.
according to our culture. Yeah.
Yes, and this is what we're talking about. It is understood that when you wake up in the morning, especially if you're from the south, the western part of Africa, there's a way you have to bow to greet your elders, whether they are your parents or not. Even when you go on the street, you greet the elders. But that's not what we see here. You know, I mean, here you can even hear in class a child saying to the teacher, "You're silly." But that is part of the highest point of disrespect when it comes to Africa. So so now the question is, and this thing I'm asking you is just
And
what
that's
someone
why.
just sent to me. That someone just sent it to me that okay,
Yeah.
so we should not lord our own values over there, and that means we should just be passive and we should accept the British way.
No, no,
Okay,
that's not what I meant. That's not
okay,
what I meant. What I'm saying is, while our children are growing in another man's culture, while they grow within another culture, we can still live our own culture. We can still live out our culture too. Now, what do I mean? You have just given an example of children calling grandparents by their names. That is not our culture. We teach what we want to see in our children. We model what we want to see in our children. That my child lives in the United Kingdom does not mean my father will come down to the United Kingdom and my child will call my father by his name. That is not my culture. I will teach my child according to my culture. And I do not expect my child to meet an African parent and disrespect such. I don't expect my child to even see a white man and disrespect him. But a white man would not accept my child calling him or her Mr. or Mrs. something. No, a white man wouldn't accept that. If a white man wants to be called by his name, it's not an issue. It is only our culture that has said you don't call an elder by the name. If the British culture says call a white man by his name, I won't stop my child from calling the white man by his name. Because if my child does not do that, the white man may not be satisfied with that. That's what his culture says.
So and then
So
are
I
you
won't
living in
lord
freedom?
my
Are you
culture
living in
over
freedom then?
the British culture that says
Are you living in freedom when you do that then?
lord my culture over my
Or you,
child.
I mean, so from what you've said there, is that are you living in freedom or living under the fear of adapting and adhering to the British culture?
I'm just balancing it. I mentioned earlier, while my child may call a white man by his name, I will still make the child understand that you won't call
But
an
you know what?
African
I want to
parent
say
by
something.
their name. We,
Wait,
we,
I
we
want to
need to
say
help the
something.
child understand what's going on.
Good. Now,
Okay.
I'm going to tell you something. When the children go to school, they call their teachers by Mr. This, Mrs. That, Mr. This, Mrs. That. So, which means there's nothing wrong with them to call anybody on the street Mr. This, Mr. That, Mrs. This, Mrs. That. But when you now see the British family, like in the settings of their context in the house and everything, this is where you see them say Sarah, and that's a granny. That's someone calling a grand Sarah, you know, by name, or even calling their own mother by name, their own parents by name. And you know,
Yeah.
this we don't take that in Africa. Even as I am to now, when I see people who are older than me, it's still the way we do in Africa, uncle, auntie, even you go as far as saying mommy, daddy.
Yeah.
But there's something we've seen in today's African family that we want to always take that British culture to say, well, in the true sense of English or the English tradition or the British tradition, you call that my friend uncle or aunt or auntie.
Mm.
I think you understand what I'm talking to here. Like if you look at the African
Yeah, I do.
tradition,
I
if
do.
someone is of the same age of your mom or dad, you call them mommy or daddy, regardless.
Yeah.
Mama, papa, that's how we do. But
Yeah.
the British culture is not like that. And the danger of it, you pointed out earlier that what the Asians are, you know, the Asian community and this. But I can tell you something that passive actions you've talked about that okay, you know, we should draw the line, we should not load our culture away. But that's exactly what the Asian family does, what they do. Because I have friends in that family, and I can tell you that it's only when the children start nursery they start learning English. It is the traditional language, whether Hindu or Arabic, whichever one they come from, they speak in the house. And until they get
Yeah.
to go to school, that's when they speak. In fact, when their parents come to collect them from school, for those who are Muslim, it's Salam Alaikum, they greet themselves and they start conversating in their language. So, and I'm just talking towards this because that's what someone have said that why is it hard for us to put our children through our culture here in the UK and stand by it?
Why is it hard for us to
Yeah.
you have just mentioned one of the reasons.
Okay.
There are laws within the culture of the English people. Their laws permit certain things and would not permit certain things. One of such is in the
Like,
disciplinary area. The British culture, the British culture will not allow you spank a child, beat a child.
well,
And
it's
that's
only
why
in
many of us
Scotland
are
now.
having the issues of,
It's only in Scotland now that smacking is a
excuse me,
crime. I said it's only in Scotland now that smacking is a crime.
in Scotland.
In other parts, yes,
Even in
only in
England,
Scotland.
it
In
is.
in England you can still smack, but it must not be damaging to the child's body. But in Scotland you can't
Exactly.
smack at all. If you
Exactly.
smack in
And even
Scotland,
even the
it's
even the
criminal.
smacking, even the smacking, if they get to know that you smacked a child, they begin to put an eye on you. They begin to throw you, they begin to find out if you are causing any damage or not. And the fear of that is making a lot of African parents to start living, as in to start playing the victim now. The fear of, I don't want to be caught by the government. I don't want to have any issue with the social people, social department. I don't want to go to the prison because of a child. The fear of that is making so many African parents to start playing the victim. And so we allow anything. We allow these children freedom. We don't set boundaries for them. You know, we let them have whatever they want. The fear of, I don't want to have any issue with the UK government is, we are the victims now as parents. And those children now are the ones dictating to us. We are no longer authoritative. Those children are the ones holding the scepter of authority now. If you go to many African families. So if a child tells a parent, this is what I am doing, that's what the child will do. And you won't question the child because you don't want, because of the fear of what the British government will do.
So
But
now
then,
this is where we're going. This is where we're going. You just eat it there. So what do we do about this
okay.
situation? Because this is the situation we found ourselves. Even a 5-year-old, even a 7-year-old can do what you've just mentioned there, not only teenagers. Where do we go from here? How do we, I mean, so I know you work with teenagers, but where do we go from here? Is this how we're just going to be watching? We can see a lot. You yourself, you just said it there, the number of crimes committed by the African children in London and things like that. So are we just going to fold our hands and say, okay, this? I mean, I heard of a case, there was a case I had about some time ago, and it was about a baby, maybe a 4-month-old baby, and the doctor actually referred the parents to social welfare, saying that they've been negligent of the baby because the baby, according to him, is overweight. Not the malnourished, but the baby is overweight. Now tell me, is that not going beyond? I mean, saying that the body marks, the BMI of the child has gone overboard, and that, yeah, for that reason. And meanwhile, this BMI model you're talking about was designed for white babies, because no black baby was included in the research when they were doing the research. So, from your expertise, just before we go on, just to let people know, this is the Nigerian Pride on Jambo Radio. You can get us via www.jamboradio.co.uk. You can phone in if you want to phone in by dialing 0743 782 6865, or you can tweet us at Jambo Radio Scotland on Twitter. You can also listen to us on your radio on the AB if you are around Glasgow and Paisley. I don't know what happened there. I think my guest disappeared. But I mean, it will be good to just, okay, she's back. It would be
Yeah.
good to just see, there's some more of the reasons. I mean, a lot of things are going on out there, and you listen to news, you listen to different stories, and there are times you even go to others, parent, what do they call it now? The parent hearing forum, and you listen to some cases, and it's just a matter of the people that the British government try to understand the culture of the African community, and let's blend it together. Because for me, I'm still going to allow you. I just want to make sure I want this commentary that you know a lot of times, and I am guilty of this as well. There's nothing that says as a parent you should not your children should not be speaking your own traditional language. If you are Igbo, let them speak Igbo. If you're Yoruba, let them speak Yoruba. If you're Hausa, let them speak Hausa. If you're African, let them speak Swahili. Let them speak all those languages at home. They will still go out to school to learn English. So definitely they will understand English. Now, coming
Yeah.
back to you saying we are lording our culture over the British culture. Have we not even loaded the culture of the British over our own culture even before getting here? Looking at how we set standard even in our education back at home to social status until we get here.
Okay, so we need a balance. Yeah, I've seen that, just like you said, many of us have given up. We've given in, actually lording their quarrels too over ours. We need a balance here. All right. So rather than lord the British culture over our own culture, our culture that comes with respect, our culture that teaches kindness, our culture that teaches hospitality, rather than lord the British culture over our own culture, I think it is time for African parents to rise up and model what they want to see in their children. Don't wait until that child grows into becoming a teenager before you start modeling what you want to see in the child. And I will also beg African parents, it's time we go back to teaching our children our languages. And this is not even, it's not even a matter of being in the UK. Even back home in Nigeria, a lot of homes have lost it when it comes to teaching our traditional languages. We have become Oyinbo homes, even back in Nigeria. So I think one of the things that can help imbibe this culture, our culture that we are talking about in our children, is helping our children understand our traditional languages. A lot of homes have missed it in that area. And so we are raising Oyinbo children. We are raising white children now, rather than raising African children. So we need to go back to those days where parents can can communicate with their children in their languages and the children will understand. We need to go back to that. Again, can we begin to teach the culture of respect again? Can we begin to teach the culture of kindness again? That fear that we have as African parents is making many of us not to teach our children what it means to be kind. And so those children are turning their backs against us. You can imagine, because a mother deprived a child of his mobile phone, the child, in fact, the child ruined everything in the house. A child that has been taught kindness will not do that. And those are the values that our culture gave to us. But we are not giving those children these values again because we are afraid that the government will get to us. So can we begin to teach them? Can we begin to model to them what we want to see, despite that they are living in another culture, despite that they are growing in another culture? That's what it means to balance it. Let them grow in that culture, but teach them what your culture says too. Don't be quiet about your own culture while upholding another man's culture. I don't know if we are
Okay.
getting it. And
Yeah.
okay, all right, go
No,
on.
I was just gonna say that. I was just gonna say that, like
If
you've
okay,
read out some things there. you've mentioned some things there which are important, but how do we do this? Because we're in a country where they want to see a coordinated body of people to pass information to them, to sit down with them and talk things over. Where do we start with this? Especially with the teenagers. Where do we start
You
with
know one of the
this?
okay, okay. You know one of the problems we have here as African parents. We are all busy. Everyone is busy trying to raise money. Everyone is busy trying to make money. Everyone is busy because we have found ourselves in a place that seems like pasture. We want to make money. We want to impress people back home. We are just busy, and so no one has anyone's time. Even these children that we are talking about, we really are not having time for them. And so coming together as a community is becoming tougher by the day, until we start creating time from the family. Let family start getting intentional about their children. From the family, let it get into a smaller community of Africans. Let Africa living within a community come together. Let's start for a way to empower our children with our culture, with our values. I love what a lady is doing. There's someone doing something called Ashalewa in London. Ashalewa. She brings together children from African homes, and she teaches them about the African culture. She teaches the language. She teaches Yoruba language, actually. I love what she's doing. Can we start having smaller communities like that can bring together African children and imbibe in them our culture, imbibe in them those values that we are talking about? So, like I have mentioned, number one, let families become intentional. Parents are too busy. Parents should start creating time for the children to imbibe our culture in them. Parents should not become too busy that they don't even know what's going on with those children. Parents should not become so busy that they can't supervise the children. And we should we should bring back our languages into the home. You can imagine parents who can't even communicate. You can't even send a message to your child in your own language. The child does not even understand what you are saying. Let's start getting intentional about this. Start speaking that language to your child. Start picking it little by little, and then we'll start seeing the changes. Teach what you want to see in that child. Teach your culture. Model it to that child. Model kindness to that child. Model respect to your child. And children learn when they see. They learn very fast when they see. So let's
Absolutely.
model what we want to see in them, and let us come together as smaller. Let's come together as smaller communities. I love some churches. The church I attend, where I live in the UK, is a Nigerian church. That's another thing that is helping. It's a Nigerian church. A church that brings together Nigerians. Let's move together as Nigerians. Let's start meeting in smaller communities that can help us. I think if we start doing that, if everyone is not doing I am on my own, if everyone is not facing their own businesses alone, I think there is going to be a change.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what you're advocating for there is that we need to come together in unity. We need to work this out together apart from the fact that we need to instill this culture in our own children at home, from the languages, the food, the norms, folkwares, and everything, we still need to come together in unity.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean,
Can I say something about the food?
oh yeah, go on.
Yeah. I have seen that when our children come to this land and by the year to school, they start eating the school's dinner and all that, start living our own food, our cultural food. You know, I had this experience when I first came into this land. But then what I started doing was that I started bringing back the food every weekend. Like beans pudding, momoy. There was a weekend I told my daughter, okay, we are going to be making momoy. Even if you are not going to eat, I want you to watch how I make it. Let's do this together. And she, there was a day I was going to make another thing like that. I called her. Even if they are not going to eat it, helping them learn it, we still be imbibing our cultural food in them. You will find out that a child that learns to make that one day won't eat. But a child that don't even seen the food around have even turned to Oyinbo in our houses now. It is only Oyinbo food that we eat. A child that is only around, how do you expect the child to eat your cultural food? Many of us parents are doing we are causing the junk of this problem. We are causing it. Many of us forget where we are coming from too. We forget that we are Africans and we ourselves have turned ourselves into Oyinbo. We are even the ones introducing those children to the Oyinbo food, to the culture of the Oyinbo. We are the ones lording their culture over ours. So parents should also check it.
Hey, parents should also check it. We need to be united. We need to make sure that we balance it the way with the way we deal with the upbringing of our children. Yet, whilst we know that many parents in the African community are living in fear of of bringing up their children in the system, we have to also do our best. And I mean, I don't know what I'll be saying, asking my guests to do is if my guests can just give us like, like a sign off message, particularly to many parents who have teenagers. What will you be advising them to be doing with their teenagers, regardless of whether they are from African background or not?
Thank you very much. Once again, I'm grateful for this privilege. If you're a parent and you have teenagers, I would love to encourage um listen to your teenagers
Seriously?
that they are in they are in different culture, an entirely different culture. And this culture is mounting so many pressure on them too. If you're not going to lose out that teenager, you need to do more of listening than judging that teenager. Be open, be accessible to your teenager. As a matter of fact, your teenagers need you as their best friends for now. Many of these teenagers are opening up to their friends. They are telling their friends top secrets that they can't even tell you because you are too rigid on them. you are holding to the African, you won't even be flexible at all with them. You won't listen to them. So please, I want to beg us, let's be flexible. Let's be access. Allow these children to speak to you. And don't get too busy that when they want to speak to you, you are nowhere to be found. And another thing, these children are at that stage where they are struggling to make decisions of their own. Give room for dialogue. Dialogue with them. Don't be their decision maker. Don't make decisions for them. Dialogue with them. When you dialogue with them, they will make the best decision. But when you are lording your decision over them, they will gradually start bottling up and not speak to you. Please, let's be free with them. Let's allow them come to us. Let's allow them see that we want to hear from them. We want to listen to them.
Right. I mean,
I'm
that's it.
hoping that
Yes.
if we
Go on, finish up quickly.
all right. So if we can start listening to our teenagers, if we can start allowing them speak, if we are not if we are not making them see us like we are at a battle with them, it will help our community as African parents. It will help us a lot, rather than you offending your child and your child is calling the police on you and your child is calling for your arrest. If you wrong your child and your child knows that you are the listening parent, that child will come to you and let you know that you have wronged me. The truth is, we don't want to, and many of us are busy. We don't even care. We don't know what's going on. If you are too busy for that child, that money you are making, if you are not careful, later in the future, you'll be spending it on damage repair. You don't want to be doing that. So please, let's open up. Allow these children come to us. Don't be too tight-fisted. Give them some freedom. Give them some space too. Don't become a police because your child has become a teenager. Don't turn yourself into the police of that child. You are there following that child up and down. You want to know what the child is doing on the phone and all that. Don't turn yourself into a police. The more you police the child, the more you send the child away from you. All right, Lion Olu, I'm so grateful for this privilege. Thank
the
you so
more
much, sir.
the more
Thank you.
you the more you the more you police the child, the more you chase the child away from you. That's the final word today from our guest today on the show, Mrs. Okpeyemi Balogun, who is the convener of Niger Teenage Network. I hope I got it right. So viewers, there you have it. In the African community, despite the fear we are having, I think it's time for all the different associations, all the different charities to start coming together and see how we can work together to present our culture to the government of where we are, making sure that they get to understand us, to promote integration. We don't want the African identity to be lost with this generation. It is a culture that must continue, and we must live to protect it. On that note, I'm going to bid my farewell to all of you tonight, and next week we will be taking a critical look at the 70 years reign of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Until next week, I am Lion Olusokunbi. Thanks to my guys behind the cameras. Thanks to Serena, and hopefully you enjoy your holiday while you're away. And to all the other guys there, say have a good evening. Bye for now.